Good evening. Welcome to Straight Talk. We're delighted to have as our guest for the entire evening the Long Beach City Auditor, Laura Doud. Laura, welcome back to our show.
Thanks, Art. Thanks for having me.
Laura was first here during the campaign, and then she had visited us during her first year in office, and now you have been in office 2 years, and again, an annual visit. And you've told me that the office is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year.
That's right, it is. For 100 years. The first city auditor was elected in 1908, wow. A man by the name of Ira Hatch that served the city well, and here we are 100 years later. I do want to mention, though, there was a woman that was elected the 5th city auditor for the city of Long Beach. Her name was Myrtle Gunzel. She was first elected in 1919. Amazing for a woman to be elected at that time. And she served for 32 years. She was elected 11 times, and she retired in 1951. So
a real trailblazer.
Oh, she really was for a woman. She was a true trailblazer, just served the city with such commitment and dedication.
And when you think about it, having a woman 80 years ago with that kind of professional training wasn't that common.
Right, it wasn't.
And they just got the right to vote sometime around then.
That's right, exactly.
You guys.
That's right, so it was pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
And she served the city very well, and our office has her picture hanging up.
Well, there's some bumper sticker, the best man for a job is a woman. Anyway. Well, let's look at some of the accomplishments this last year. I know that they include the audit of Prop 8, the oil money, and several other audits that you completed. But let's focus on that oil money for a second, because that was several $1 million from heaven.
That's right. The oil production tax that was passed by the voters in 2007. The first year it brought in $3.5 million. And I think it's important to let the public and the viewers know the benefit that they received from that money.
And let's just clarify it. That was to raise the amount per barrel that Long Beach got for the oil that's within our jurisdiction. And you advocated that, and you worked out a deal with the oil companies where they agreed to this increase. We were way under the market.
That's right, and it was a matter of equity to get within the market, and it was a tax on the oil companies and not on consumers. And so this money is being received by the city of Long Beach, $3.5 million, as I mentioned last year. And just to let you know what that money bought, it bought 14 police officers that are now on motorcycles out there patrolling our streets, keeping our city safe. It also purchased 12 firefighters as well as a new fire truck.
Amen to that.
And so, yes, this money was specifically dedicated for public safety.
That's right. And you wrote the ballot argument, I think, for it.
I was a proponent of it.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
And so, yeah, that was really an important measure, and it was exciting that the public rallied behind it and saw that it was truly a benefit for the city, and it would benefit specifically public safety. It's my job as the city auditor to audit those funds to make sure we're receiving the proper amount and that it's being allocated appropriately. And I'd like to assure the public that it is.
Excellent. You also completed the police audit.
That's right, we did. And we have a wonderful police department within the city of Long Beach, but as you know, every department, there's room for improvement, especially in these tough budget times. The police department is about 45% of the general fund. We did audit them to look for areas of improvement and efficiencies. We identified several areas, and just to highlight a couple of the areas we identified, one was civilianization, which basically takes officers, sworn officers that are working behind desks, and move them out into patrol and then replace them with civilians. And we identified 23 positions that could be civilianized, and the police department has implemented 7 of those positions. So we have, as a result of our audit, there are 7 more sworn police officers on the streets patrolling Long Beach and keeping it safe.
And you follow up on your audits, implementing to see that they're implemented.
Yes, exactly. I think it's one of my goals as the city auditor that when we do an audit, that it not just sit on a shelf and collect dust,
right,
but that it's truly implemented. There is a lot of time and effort and focus and work that goes into finding areas for improvement, and it's our job to make sure that these things are implemented and not just fall flat. So we've worked really hard to keep this police audit alive, and I think the city overall, the budget process just completed, and the city's budget really benefited as a result of our police audit. It was able to contain the police overtime by $4 million, and it was a huge benefit to the bottom line.
I'm sure it's an incentive to organizations that are audited to implement some of the recommendations if they know that the city auditor will be viewing whether or not they do implement it rather than just letting it go into the ether.
Right, yes, that's I think what makes our audits relevant, and that's my job as the city's watchdog.
The principle of accountability, which is much talked about today, is alive and well here.
Right, exactly, and it's a big responsibility, as you know, as I've talked to you before about being the city auditor.
Yeah.
But as this is as we were just talking earlier before the show, this is my third time back. Once during the campaign, once at my first year, and then now it's at the end of my second year. And I just want to, take this opportunity to say how much I am enjoying this job. How it's just, I feel like it's been tailor-made for me. I love it. It's my passion. It agrees with my background and my skills and my education and my love for the city. So it's been truly an honor to serve. And
well, that came through in your campaign, and it got you in part elected. So I'm glad to see the passion and commitment has not subsided.
Thank you. And again, it's a big responsibility. We take it seriously. There is a lot of funds that we have to look after and watch, and there are a lot of departments that we oversee. But like you say, we're looking at everything we can, trying to focus our resources and making sure that our audits are relevant and are kept alive and are implemented to ultimately benefit the public.
Amen to that. We'll be continuing our conversation after these messages. Continuing our conversation with Long Beach City Auditor Laura Doud. You mentioned overtime in the last segment. Firefighters' overtime is a big number, I think something around $13 million. And there was a suggestion made that one of the ways to reduce that huge number was to eliminate the full staffing requirement in the union contract where a firefighter is sick or ill or can't show up for whatever reason, that he or she has to be replaced, and normally that replacement is on overtime. And the writer of the letter suggested that in some areas of the city where the demand is rather less for services, maybe that could be waived as a way of reducing that huge $13 million firefighter overtime bill.
Mm-hmm. That's a good observation. I appreciate the information. And I think that's one of the messages I'd like to get out to the public too, is if they have information and areas for improvement that they can see throughout the city, that this is what I'm here for, to communicate with us. We have a website. I think later on in the show we can talk about, the website name, or I can just give it now, www.cityauditorlauradoud.com.
We put that up at the end of each segment, so you can write it down at the end of this segment. And so you encourage citizens to come up with suggestions.
Absolutely, right. When you have ideas on ways.
So you view your office as more than just auditing the numbers. You want to make this a more efficient city.